Reading The Unknown Reality by Jane Roberts, a Seth book, Volume 2. Session 733. Seth states, when you are in an airplane looking down upon the planet, then you see the mountain ranges and the valleys, the rivers, plateaus, cities, fields, and villages. To some extent, you realize that the world has physical contents, existing at one time, yet varying in their characteristics. In those terms, the world is composed of its physical ingredients. That quote-unquote package is the only part of the picture that you see, however. Psychically, your world is composed of the contents of its consciousness. You have maps of continents and oceans, and in the entire view, each portion is like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, all fitting together perfectly, smoothly flowing into the natural structure of the world. So, at any given time, there is a world consciousness, a perfect jigsaw of awareness in which each identity, however large or small, has its part. There are earthquakes that erupt physically, and tracings are made of them. There are also inner earthquakes of consciousness, from which the physical ones emerge, storms of mind or being, eruptions in which one segment of the world consciousness, repressed in one area, explodes in another. If you could orbit your planet in a different kind of craft, you could view the psychic contents of the world, seeing the world consciousness shining far more brightly than any lighted city. You could spot the point of intense activity, see the birth of new myths, and the death of old ones, as certainly as you might be able to see a mountainslide or a tidal wave. The physical portions of the earth are all related. So does the consciousness form its own kind of inner structures, from which again the physical ones emerge. You are indeed counterparts then, each of the other. Yet as there is great variety to physical form, so counterparts follow a still more expansive inner freedom that finds an even greater diversity of characteristics. As I have certainly hinted, the body is a miraculous organism, and you have barely learned the most simple of its structures. You do not understand the properties of soul or body, yet the body was given to you so that you could learn from it. The properties of the earth are meant to lead you into the nature of the soul. You create physical reality, yet without knowing how you do so that the wondrous structure of the earth itself is meant to lead you to question your own source. Nature, as you understand it, is meant to be your teacher. You are not its master. The Creator is not the master of his creations. He is simply their creator, and he creates because he does not attempt to control. When you try to control power or people, you always copy. To some extent, the world copies itself in that there are patterns, but those patterns are always changed to one extent or another, so that no object is ever a copy of another, though it may appear to be the same. In your terms, the world is intensely different from one moment to another, with each smallest portion of consciousness choosing its reality from a field of infinite probabilities. Immense calculations far beyond your conscious decisions as you think of them are possible only because of the unutterable freedom that resides within minute worlds inside your skull. Patterns of interrelationships, counterparts so cunningly woven that each is unique, free-willing, and involved in an infinite cooperative venture so powerful that the atoms stay in certain forms, and the same stars shine in the sky. The familiar and strange are intimately connected in your most obvious, your simplest utterance. You are surrounded by miracles. Why then does the world so often seem dour and cruel? Why do your fellow beings sometimes seem like unfeeling monsters, Frankensteins not of body but of mind, spiritual idiots, ignorant of any heritage of love or truth or even graceful beasthood? Why does it seem to many of you that the race, the species, is doomed? Why do some of you feel in your quiet moments such a sentence just? You make your own reality. Generally speaking, most of you live in your own world with others of your kind. Those of you who do not believe in war have not experienced it. It may have surrounded you, but you did not experience it. Those of you who do not believe in greed have not suffered its quote-unquote consequences. If you still see it, it is because it is a part of your reality. If you are honestly not greedy, yet you see greed, then perhaps you are serving as an example to others, but you form your own reality. There are more worlds than you suppose, and in your own private experience, each of you contributes to the world that you know. You and your counterparts together form it. Your physical body alone is equipped to perceive far more than you presently allow it to. Physically, you are a part of every other person upon the earth, and you have a connection with each leaf and frog and nail. You choose the city or state or country in which you live. No one forces you to stay there unless you are looking for an excuse to remain. So you choose your psychic land as well. You can travel from one psychic land to another as you can journey into other parts of the physical world. Some great travelers never left the country of their birth. Michelangelo roamed the centuries, picking up visions and ideas as others might by postcards, journeying from one country to a foreign land. His genius shows you what you are, and yet it is but a hint of the potential with which your species is endowed. In the light of such ideals, surely you seem wanting, yet your reality is one in which the greatest freedoms have been allowed. This means that you have given yourselves full range so that all probabilities could be explored, and none left out that were physically feasible. This species gave itself no quote-unquote preordained taboos. The infinite ranges possible to human capabilities would be explored, and those who chose that route said, quote, "We will trust that our creativity will find its own way, and if there are nightmares, we will waken from them. We will even learn from them. We will dare to push aside the dimensions of being into those realms in which only the gods have gone before. And through our utter vulnerability to experience, discover the divinity that gives our humanity its meaning. And through the compassion that we have learned, we will be able to understand the divine errors that gave us the gift of our birth. Souls and molecules each are learning, each are forming realities, each are a part of a divinity in which each counterpart has a part to play. End quote. Alright, so at this point they take a break. And let me just say that in the notes it says that Jane felt a great energy sweeping through her. And Rob inserts a poem that Jane had written May 1963, well over 6 months before she began speaking for Seth. At this time, she recited the first verse, which is, "Magic is my middle name. I was so brave and tall. No one knew who I was then, myself least of all." And that's all they give you on that. Now, Jane's just waiting for Seth to come back. So then Jane says, "Now I'm getting different things, but they aren't clear, so I'll just wait." Then she says, "I'm getting one of those frustrating things that's too big, too massive really to be verbalized. There's a sense of strain. I'm trying to go beyond myself. Now I'm almost getting it." And then she, half smiling, bemused, shook her head. "Well, I'll see, Rob, I'll just see." And then Seth comes in quietly, it says. He states, "I dwell, in a way, in a realm that is more direct than yours. That is one image. I allow myself greater acknowledgement of my being. I speak with the wisdom, for example, that your cells would utter if they had speech. I am more aware of my reality than you are of yours, but the terms of being are the same in every place and every time. They bring forth the greater comprehension of each self, of itself. Rupert experiences now what he calls a massive quality, a physical and psychic expansion of consciousness in which the dear familiar world seems small, yet twice precious. So does it appear to my consciousness. The petty wars, even those still to be fought, are but dim memories, once vital but lost as nightmares in greater awakenings. So even in this moment, Rupert faintly feels a nostalgic memory for lives come and gone, as you might for fond dreams barely recalled. They represent a present, unique beyond telling, alive in each consciousness, more important than you recognize. There are no real rules to be followed that will bring you into such an encounter with the present moment of reality. Only a trust in the nature of your being, and that trust is within you, whether or not you recognize it, for it gives you your present experience, and no matter how your mind questions, it rides securely in the great creativity of the soul. That soul constantly creates the body, and each individual on the face of the earth at any given time places his or her trust in that reality. That feeling of certainty is the same that any plant knows. Any idea, creative insight or dream, rides upon the same sure trust. And that's the end of dictation. Right here it says in the notes, Jane said her quote-unquote massive feeling was gone now. She added that she didn't think she'd held anything back, but at the same time, she had sensed information we weren't ready for yet, or that, to put it another way, lay in the future. Okay, so post-session notes. Number 1. Seth, way back in the 23rd session for February 5, 1964, stated, quote, "Nor do I know all the answers. It is, however, a fact that even man, in his blundering manner, will discover that he himself creates his own physical universe, and that the mechanisms of the physical body have more functions and varieties than he knows." End quote. And number 2 says, at about the same time Seth was producing his material on patterns for unknown reality, Jane was dealing with the same concept from her own, much more personal viewpoint. He says, see chapter 18 of her book, Psychic Politics, where Jane states, quote, "It's the entire human element that is so perplexing, vast, humorous, and tragic all at once. To some extent, my humor helps me avoid pitfalls and lets me help others to see their lives in better perspective. Then I understood something else. The phone calls, visits, and letters were falling into patterns, just as the subjective events of my life had been doing. They came in clusters, dealing with certain particular questions and subject matter. Each call gave me the opportunity to see how various people organized exterior reality according to inner politics. Amazing that I hadn't seen the connections earlier." End quote by Jane. So, skipping note 4 and 5, you guys can read that if you're interested in Michelangelo and haven't heard prior videos in this playlist. You would go to video number 22 specifically to get that information about Michelangelo that Jane comments about. And then note number 6, Rob states, much of Seth's material in this session and in this paragraph, I'll tell you the paragraph again in a sec, along with his obvious intense feelings about what he was saying, reminded me of a group of sessions he gave well over a decade ago on the 3 creative dilemmas of all that is. In them, he discussed at length the, quote, agonized search, end quote, for expression of the powers of creativity and existence, and how the beginning of that search, quote, may have represented the birth throes of all that is as we know it, end quote. He says those sessions 426 to 428 were held August 1964, and Jane presented excerpts from them in chapter 18 of the Seth material. I will definitely give you guys that link. So in note 6, it was in reference to the part where Seth stated divine errors that gave us the gift of our birth. And okay, so now note number 7 says, for material concerning some of Jane's experiences with massiveness, see the opening pages of Appendix 19 as well as note number 2. And not only is Seth number 2 involved, Volume 1 of Unknown Reality as well as Personal Reality are also referred to in that appendix. When I get to that, that will be linked in the video's description. And then continuing that last note, it says, Seth's almost casual remark here, quote, so does it appear to my consciousness, end quote, embodies a new thought for us in connection with Jane's adventures with massiveness. It's the kind of clue about the Seth phenomenon that we're always interested in getting. I think the statement represents one way in which Jane, while speaking for Seth, interprets his reality for us in terms we can understand. So that's the end of the session, and this is some of what the next session is going to be about. You can pause and read that. And Rob states that the 734th session is going to be on families of consciousness and counterparts. And it says the Sumari. So more description going into Sumari. So again, thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or statements or anything.